This is an impromptu video. I'm here with the Tim and I, and we're going to do a video today on how to create a character for D6 role-playing for the Star Wars role-playing system from West End Games from, what was that, 87?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. You can see us playing the game earlier on my channel. Some of my earliest videos include one of our game sessions. Yeah. One of the big differences between what most people are used to, which is Dungeons and Dragons, and the D6 system, is the D6 system is skill-based, it's not level-based. So you're not worried about hitting your next level, you're not concerned about hitting your next level. You get your skills, you earn your skills as you grow. When you advance your character, you use character points to increase your skills instead of trying to hit the next level and then get access to parry as a fighter or a paladin or whatever. You would increase your parry skill if you wanted to get better at defending yourself with a sword or a spear or whatever. Or in Star Wars, more likely you're going to be increasing your blaster skill and your dodge skill.
And it opens up wonderful possibilities, such as you're likely never going to meet an enemy who has more hit points than you, so to speak, as in like Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone is generally within the same range of be able to take damage, and so in some ways it makes it more fun and be able to focus more on role playing, especially for starting characters, which we'll get to in a bit.
So, yeah, it's a very lethal game as far as your characters go. You're not going to. There's not a lot of healing in the middle of combat or anything like that. You want to not get hit. You want to be safe, and you're mostly fighting human opponents. So you might be fighting aliens, but most people have around the same stats, and you're fighting Imperial stormtroopers or
Thugs,
Espo guards, Compnor. We did our campaign right now. We're fighting Compnor a lot. And the role-playing game actually created a lot of the bedrock foundation for the Star Wars universe, extended universe, back in 87 through 90 or so. They came up with a lot of the background stuff that other authors would use, especially Timothy Zahn.
And even to today, even Disney still pulls stuff from the old West End game stuff and expanded universe. So, for nice history before the history. Go ahead.
For instance, the Interdictor Cruiser, which I believe was used in Rebels, right?
Correct.
The Interdictor Cruiser was created by, that's the one that produces gravity wells, so you can't hyperspace out of an area. They've got a starship that creates gravity wells. You can't leave the area through hyperspace. That was created by West End Games. Anyway, so actually making your character. The first thing you need to know is it's called D6 because all you use are six-sided die. Okay, that's all that's here. There's a variety of them. You want one that's a different color because there's a wild die, but you don't have to worry about that right now. So you roll them and you add them up, and that's your dice total. So whatever your skill level is at is we call it. Let's say your blaster skill. You're a professional shooter, okay, or a bounty hunter or whatever, mercenary.
Bounty hunter, mercenary, soldier, take your pick.
Yeah, smuggler. So 4D is considered a professional level. That's where you would roll 1, 2, 3, 4 dice. Then you'd add up that total. A dice averages out to about 3.5 on average. It's six-sided die, so you're generally going to be rolling a 3 or 4 on each die. If you roll enough die, you're going to end up just multiplying that by 3.5, and that's generally what your roll is going to be. Or you can do 3 and 4 times whatever that is. So 4D is an average between 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 4 is 16. So on average, you're going to get somewhere between a 12 and a 16. You can get higher than that, you can get lower than that, but on average, that's what your roll is going to be, and that's considered professional. Stormtroopers have a 4D skill in blaster, for instance. Most people do not have a 4D skill in blaster. To improve your skill when you advance as a character, uh, you're going to increase it by what we call pips. And a pip is a +1. And how that works is, let's say you have 40 skill in Blaster and you want to improve that. So you spend the character points you need to bring that to 4D +1. So then you take your roll, and you'd get, what did we get there? 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 and 4, 13, right? 6 and 4, yeah. No, 6 and 4 is 10. So you get 10 as the 13. Your roll was 10, which is a little low for 4 die. Not very low, but a little low for 4 die. And then you would add that 1 to it. So it's 4D +1, so you roll 10, you add 1 to it. Now, improving skills go +1, +2, new die. So it'd be 4D +1. After your next session, you improve it again. 4D +2. After your third session, you improve Blaster a third time, and now you're at 5D. Okay? Simple enough. So those are the things you will see is on your character sheet are 2D +1, 4D +1, depending on what your skills and attributes are. There are 6 attributes in the game, and I don't know if you're going to be able to read this, but we printed out a character sheet. And it is dexterity, knowledge, mechanical, perception, strength, and technical. I'm trying to read this upside down, but I'm going to bring that in for a quick zoom. Oh!
It reversed it.
It reversed it. Of course it did.
It reversed it on the video.
Anyway, what are you going to do? So let's go over the different attributes. Let's go over how attributes and skills work. Skills go under attributes. So, for instance, Blaster, which we've been talking about, goes under dexterity. So if you have a baseline dexterity of 3D, all your unimproved skills under dexterity, you're going to roll that at 3D. Any improved skills, you record down on your sheet, and you record what the skill level is at. So like if you had a Blaster improved to 4D +2, and your dexterity was 3D, that's what you would have on your sheet, is 3D up here for dexterity, and then on Blaster, 4D +2. Simple enough, right?
Indeed.
Anything to add to that?
No, that seemed pretty good.
All right. So there's 6 attributes, and we'll just go through them and cover, I guess, the skills that are under them.
Yeah.
Dexterity.
Dexterity. That is going to be anything that would require manual dexterity. So you're looking at generally most of your combat skills. You're looking at melee.
Most of your personal combat skills.
That's correct. Most of your personal combat skills. So anything that would be done by you directly. So that's going to be where your Blaster will come into play. That's going to be where melee combat and melee parry come into play. It's where brawling parry comes into play. We'll get to that later.
We might not.
We might not. Also running.
Mm-hmm. Dodge is a very important one. Pickpocket. Blaster, obviously, or did you say that already?
Thought I did, but I might not have, so we'll go with that. Blaster. And then anything else similar. You got bows, slug throwers, which would be just firearms, thrown weapons, grenades, which are 2 separate skills.
Missile weapons.
Missile weapons. Yeah. Which will cover anything from a personal missile launcher to sometimes things that are on vehicles, but
yeah,
we didn't write it. We just play it.
Yeah, and sometimes we change it because that makes things better. Let's do strength next.
Strength. All right. Strength is very simple. You pretty much have just 3 skills. Stamina, brawling, climb, jump. There might be another one, but...
Swimming and lifting.
Oh, swimming and lifting.
Which you almost never see. I mean, you might see a lot of swimming depending on your GM and the storyline they come up with. If you're playing a Moncal, or those frog people there it doesn't matter. If you're playing an aquatic species, the Naratu, the squid heads.
Is that the
Nautilins?
Whatever Kit Fisto was.
Yeah. So if you're playing an aquatic species, you might have swim, but I'm having a hard time thinking of any game where we use swim. Maybe one of the superhero games that we...
I might now.
All right. The thing about strength as an attribute is strength is what you use to resist damage. So if you get hit, you're going to be rolling your strength score to resist damage. So whatever the damage you get hit with, let's say they're rolling a blaster of 4D and you have strength of 3D, it's an opposed roll of 4D versus 3D. So roll high. What do you want to do next? Knowledge?
No,
Nah,
no,
sure.
yeah, why not? So knowledge is pretty much like it sounds. Any sort of skill that would directly affect what your character knows in kind of a bookish sense. So you've got the scholar skill, which that one's special, but we can go into it right now anyways. You've generally with scholar skill, most of that has specializations, which we will get into later.
Scholar means you know how to research.
There you go.
Like if you've been to college and you know how to look stuff up and write a paper, that's the scholar skill.
Also, streetwise, which is pretty much who you know
In the underworld.
in the underworld. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the underworld, but that's generally how it's played.
Survival is another one that we used a bit.
Yep.
That's knowing how to survive in various situations.
Bureaucracy, knowing
Like
how
making a
to
tent.
navigate
Business world.
business. No, bureaucracy. Generally,
yeah.
government.
Government.
Knowing how to do government. Business actually is a skill under
All on
knowledge,
its own.
So,
Most people, when you're making your character, once you've got a little experience, a lot of people don't put points into knowledge any more than they have to, because it's not flashy, it's not exciting,
that
it's
provides
not a
lot-
blaster skill.
but it provides a lot of role playing opportunities.
Right. Um, Tim actually played in one of my games a Wookiee with a 1D knowledge attribute. 2D is average, 1D is below average. So even though Tim knows about as much about Star Wars as I do, maybe more, his character didn't know anything. He failed a number of knowledge rolls that would have allowed him to use him as the player, use his knowledge of Star Wars. He as the player could not access that because his character wasn't smart enough to know about it.
And that's one of the fun things about role playing.
Yeah. Perception.
Perception. That's
Complicated.
very complicated. But the best way of putting it is how you perceive, and in some ways, how you perceive and interact with the world around you.
Yeah.
Things like sneak are under there. So for Star Wars
Can I take
purposes,
a minute and do sneak and hide?
I was about to, but you can go ahead.
All right. Two different skills. One is sneak, one is hide. Very, very easy to confuse the two. Sneak is when you yourself are sneaking or trying to be discreet. Hide is when you are hiding anything besides yourself, like an object or another person or a duck or whatever. And yeah, there were ducks on Naboo. So hide is for something else, sneak is for yourself. That's the distinction.
Gambling. So, again, how you perceive and interact. So it would cover things like under gambling, it would cover being able to bluff while you're gambling and such like that. You also have drawing a blank here.
Command, bargain,
Right.
con.
Command,
Con's
bargain,
one of my
con.
favorites.
And actually, it gives a good opportunity to kind of go into it now. Command and con can often be used for similar things, but it's all about how you're actually planning on doing it. Again, role play opportunities. But yeah, also
Forgery would be under perception.
forgery, disguise. Although no, actually, disguise is under con technically.
Yeah, it's a specialization under con. That leaves us with mechanical and technical. So
Have fun.
Tim's got to take a phone call. Simple enough. Mechanical is where all of your vehicle and artillery style combat comes into play. So if you want to fly a speeder, if you want to drive a walker, that's under mechanical. If you want to fly a starfighter, that's under mechanical. All of your combat there, most of your combat there is under mechanical. Like we mentioned, missile weapons is a dexterity thing. So if you're like on a speeder and there's weapons on the speeder, it depends on whether or not the weapons are in like a speeder tank or a walker. Those blasters on that walker would generally be a skill under mechanical, but on like a speeder, car basically, those weapons would be under dexterity, because it's more about dexterity than it is about aiming something like a cannon. Does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense or not, but that's the way it is. Starfighter weapons would be under mechanical. Capital ship weapons would be like if you're on the Star Destroyer and you're firing cannons and there's 4 or 5 of you in the crew, that would be under mechanical. Um, yeah. So if you want to be a hotshot pilot, mechanical is the attribute you want to focus on. Technical is repair and a few other things. So all of your repair skills are under technical. Security, getting in and out of places, which includes picking locks and breaking into places, that's under technical. Um, medicine, first aid. First aid's under technical. So fixing things and manipulating machinery and technology tends to be under technical. Like, yeah. So like computer programming and repair, droid repair, that's under technical. So if you want to be like a hotshot hacker who can break into any computer system, that's under technical. Yeah. So that pretty much covers it. Not going to cover the Force in this video. The Force is complicated. You should definitely play a couple of sessions before you try and figure that out, see how to get a feel for the game. What I am still going to cover is attributes and skills for starting characters. So I've got about 13 minutes left before this video cuts out on me. So here we go. Your attribute is your base level for all your skills under that attribute. So if you and humans have, we're just going to do humans for now. Different aliens have different stats. But the attributes for a human are a minimum of 2D in each attribute and a maximum of 4D. Remember, I was telling you about Tim and his Wookiee. Wookiees have a maximum strength of 6D and a minimum strength of 3D. I know I'm muddying the issue, but all in all, almost every single race has a maximum number of attribute dice of 18 dice. So since there's 6 attributes and there's 18 dice, 18 divided by 6 is 3. So if you want an average character who has a little bit of everything, it's 3D per attribute. If you do that, you'll always be able to contribute. You'll probably never be the best in the group at there'll probably be better people in the group than you are at specific tasks. But if you just want to be an all-round character, you put 3D in each attribute, and then you can improve your skills. So that's 18 dice. You don't have to use a full die. You can break a die. Now, we're going back to pips here. Remember I was talking about 4D plus 1 for the blaster, 4D plus 2. At character creation, you can take one of your dice, and you can break that up into 3 plus 1 pips. So if you wanted to, on your attributes, you would be able to have an attribute of 2D plus 1. You break one of your pips down into plus 1, and into 3 plus 1s, 3 plus 1s, and you'll be able to use those 3 plus 1s on the different attributes. You could use 2 on an attribute, so you could have an attribute of like 2D plus 2, or you could use 1, you could have an attribute of 2D plus 1, you might have an attribute of 3D plus 2. And what that means is for all this unimproved skills, you'd be rolling 3 dice, and you would add 2 to whatever your total is. It sounds more complicated than it is. This is one of the easiest systems, and once you get used to it, it's incredibly simple. It's already simpler than trying to put together your armor class and everything for D&D. To improve at character creation, you have 18 dice for your attributes. You have 7 additional dice for your skills. So, let's take Blaster. Let's say you want it to be the most dexterous guy out there. Super hand-to-hand combatant guy. So you put 4 dice into dexterity. 4 dice into dexterity. You can improve a skill up to 2 dice beyond whatever the attribute is. So if you have 4 dice in dexterity and you want to be a great shootist, then you would add 2 dice to blaster skill for a total of 6 dice, or 6 dice, however it's easiest for you to, I don't know, whatever. 6 dice for your blaster skill. That would be your maximum skill for blaster. 6 dice is the maximum skill for all humans at character creation for any given skill. Minimum is 2D because that's the minimum attribute you can have. But let's say you had an attribute that you didn't want to put a lot of points into, like technical, but you wanted a good first aid roll so that you can help people out after combat or even during combat, though first aid rolls tend to take longer than combat is over in a matter of seconds. Usually less than a minute. Most combat rounds last less than a minute. So technical, you only put 2D in there as your attribute, and you ended up saying, I want to improve first aid. So you add 2 more dice out of your 7 skill dice, leaving you with 5 dice. See, 7. Leaving you with 5 dice left to play with. You put 2 dice into first aid, bringing your first aid skill up to 4D. Remember, 4D is a professional level. If you've got a good GM who's careful with giving out character points to you and making sure you're not leveling way too fast, 4D is the max you're going to see a lot of. It's the absolute maximum you're going to see in a goon or a jabroni style character like stormtroopers. They have a maximum 4D blaster skill, and stormtroopers should be the deadliest enemy for just random troopers. Like nobody else in the Empire, except for the Imperial Guards, have a higher blaster skill than 4D, which the stormtroopers have. Compnor has his blaster skill of 3D. A lot of other Imperial Army and Imperial Navy troops have a blaster skill of 2D. If they're not infantry, they generally have a blaster skill of 2D, which is average. 2D is average. 1D is below average. So it's 1 dice in a skill is below average, 2D is average, 3D is above average, 4D is professional, 5D is better than professional, 6D is, I think it's like best out of 100,000 people. Putting this into real life, most people do not have skill levels of 6D, or they have 1 or 2 things that they do in their life that they have at a 6D level. You guys are playing hero characters, so you're going to be starting with a couple of decently high skills and higher attributes than an average person. I think that's fair. So, yeah. I think I've given you everything you need to know. When you're done with your character, what you want to do is count up all your attributes, all the dice, and make sure all the attributes get to 18D. 18 dice. Then you want to, from there, you check your skills and make sure you only use 7 skill dice. If you did all that, you're pretty much good to go. Okay? You will probably get approved by your GM if all of that is true. There are aliens, like I mentioned, Wookiees, that have higher and lower stats depending on the attribute. There are other aliens out there like Moncal who can breathe underwater. We're not going to cover any of that. I'm not going to cover how I personally do weapons and equipment, but not in this video. That differs from GM to GM. But that, I think, covers it. 18 dice for your attributes, 7 dice for your skills, and I think that's it. Anything you want to add? You have no idea what I just said for the last 10 minutes, do you?
A little bit. I could hear you a little bit, but no, that seems to about cover it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's about as the simplest character creation I've seen for a complicated role-playing game around. 18 attribute dice, 7 skill dice. That's it. All right. We're going to sign off for this one. This has been an impromptu video. Enjoy your gaming.